We're now going to be looking at the genealogies in Genesis, and I know many people skip over the genealogies, but they're actually very important to help you to understand kind of especially Genesis 1 to 11, how they're working. And I'm going to explain the importance of the genealogies, and I want to give you some tips as you are reading them. And of course, I love genealogies. I've been working in Genesis for years, and I've also written a commentary on 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and Chronicles has 9 chapters of genealogies. So there is theology in them, but I want to highlight a couple of things for you just so that you're aware of it when you're reading through. So the first thing I want you to notice is that we have genealogies given at the end of chapter 4. So there is in chapter 4, verse 17, there is Cain's genealogy. And then you'll notice chapter 5, and these are the big ones I want you to pay attention to, chapter 5 and chapter 11. So let's just think the big picture. Chapter 5 and chapter 11. These are what we call linear genealogies. And I'm going to explain linear and segmented genealogies. They're the two that you need to keep in mind. Let me repeat that. Linear and segmented. Genesis 5 and 11 are linear genealogies. And then Genesis chapter 10 is a segmented genealogy. Several scholars, there's a scholar named Wilson, and Robinson has written a great article on genealogies. And scholars have noticed that there are these two major forms. So what's the difference and how do they function? Because they have a different function. So first of all, if you have your Bible, I would encourage you to turn to Genesis chapter 5. So it begins with the Toledoth structure. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day when God created him, he made him in the likeness of God, and then male and female, he blessed him. And then look in verse 3 in particular. Adam had lived 130 years. He became the father of a son in his likeness, according to his image, and he named him Seth. Now, we already know from the story of Genesis 3 and 4, we know that Adam and Eve also had Cain and Abel, of course, who gets killed. But I want you to notice that he is only mentioning one son in each generation. That is called a linear genealogy. A linear genealogy simply means it is moving forward in a linear direction from the first figure, Adam, and this is going to go through to Noah. So that's linear, which means it is highly selective because we know that Adam and Eve had other sons, but they're not mentioned. And in fact, the genealogy says, after every generation, it said, and he had other sons and daughters, verse 4. And it repeats that all the way through. So it is highly selective. I want you to notice then that the genealogy in Genesis 5 begins with Adam, it goes through Seth, and it finishes in chapter 5, verse 32. It says, Noah was 500 years old, and Noah became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So what does this mean? So it means that the genealogy is moving from Adam to Noah, 10 generations, and it's moving through fairly quickly. It's not stopping along the way and giving you all the different relationships. And they had other sons and daughters. It is moving from Adam to Noah. I want you also to notice that the 7th member of the genealogy is highlighted. Adam is the first member. Noah is the 10th member. And right in between, Enoch, who walks with God, is the 7th member. And we have already talked about the fact that the number 7 is important in Genesis chapter 1. And so therefore, the number 7 is being highlighted here, and it's Enoch, the 7th member. And why? Because he walks with God. And we have every other person in the genealogy. It says, and he died, and he died, and he died, except for Enoch, who walks with God. That is telling us, and it's theology built into the genealogy, that somehow walking with God is the answer to death. And Noah walks with God. Abraham is told to walk before me. So it's giving you some theology in there. But let's stay with our form. So Genesis 5 is a linear genealogy. We call it is 10 generations deep because it goes through Noah, who is the 10th member. And then notice at the end of it in chapter 5, verse 32, it ends with what we call segmentation. What does that mean? It doesn't simply say Noah was 500 years old and he became the father of Shem, and then we get another linear genealogy. No, it says he's the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. That is ending with segmentation, and we are yet to find out who the linear genealogy next member will be, because it's giving us 3 sons, and that's also a literary device. Right, now look at chapter 11. If you can turn to chapter 11, verse 10, and it goes all the way through to verse 26. This is what it says. It's a new Toledo structure. These are the records of the generations of Shem. And this is now another linear genealogy. And notice that it's taking the line up through Shem. So what do we have so far? We have the genealogical line. Linear genealogy is going from Adam to Noah, and now it's going from Shem, linear genealogy, and look where it's taking us in verse 26. Terah lived 70 years, and he became the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Can you see how just like the Genesis 5 genealogy was linear and then it ended with 3 sons? Now we have the same literary form, and it is ending with 3 sons. So we don't yet know who this linear genealogy son will be. And in fact, it will be Abraham. And the genealogies in 1 Chronicles chapter 1 start with the names from Genesis 5, goes through all those names, and it moves through then the genealogy in Genesis 11, and it ends with Abraham.